To number 851. If you want to turn to Mark 915 with your song of invitation, 915 and then back to 851. Some glad morning when this life is over, fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away. Three.
else leading us on? No? Scoot this back a little bit so you can see Audrey. So thank you all for coming tonight. It's always an encouragement to see everybody's smiling faces. Midweek Bible study. I know you're committed when you show up for a midweek Bible study. So it's kind of funny. This year I've always had the devotional on holidays, dates of special remembrance, something along those lines. I think I had to do a devotional on Valentine's Day. And then next time around, it was supposed to be Memorial Day. I think Stephen and I swapped, so he got to do that one, and I got pushed back to June 6th, which was still a pretty important date. It was the anniversary of D-Day. And this next time around, it was supposed to be on September 11th, and I had to swap with Stephen. So he had September 11th last week, but I went ahead and prepared this devotional. So I'm going to go ahead and go with it, so y'all just bear with me. So you folks probably, hopefully, read about September the 11th, 2001. So y'all know about it. The rest of us, a little bit of gray in our hair. Hard to believe it was 23 years ago that this happened. But it was a day that impacted a lot of people's lives. Not only those that lost loved ones on that day, but it seemed like the country was united. We all had a purpose. We all came together. And just thinking about the tragedy that happened in New York and D.C. and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. So tonight, let's turn to John chapter 15, starting in verse 12. That's kind of going to be that'll be the text or the passage we're going to go off of tonight. So John chapter 15, starting in verse 12. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for that servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends, for all that I have heard from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another. On September the 11th, 2001, United Airlines Flight 93 was flying from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco when it was hijacked by terrorists. The plane was diverted to Washington, D.C., headed straight for the Pentagon. Some thought it was headed to the White House. When crew members and passengers made telephone calls to their loved ones and they found out what was going on, they banded together. They attempted to take back control of that plane. They inevitably gave their lives in this attempt. Everyone on that plane died. But many, many more lives were saved because of their heroic activities. There was a gentleman by the name of Rick Rescorla. Keep this one in mind. He's going to be a huge historical figure as you grow up. Rick Rescorla was 62 years old and dying of terminal bone marrow cancer on September the 11th. He was also working on the 44th floor of the World Trade Center Tower 1 when a plane crashed into the building. Rescorla, who had already gone through a previous terror attack back in 1993, I believe, 20 years earlier, he jumped into action. You see, at Morgan Stanley, Rescorla was the director of safety and security for the Morgan Stanley Dean Witter Corporation. He was responsible for the safety of over 2,700 employees in World Trade Center number 2. He had long been concerned about the potential for another terrorist attack because of what he went through back in 93. He saw those World Trade Centers as a symbol that would be an ideal target for the terrorists to carry out their operation. So he was adamant about the need for a rigorous security and safety and evacuation protocols that really was a hindrance. It was more of a nuisance to the people of the company. They didn't want to go through all these safety drills. They didn't want to do all the things necessary to ensure their safety just in case something like this happened. Well, Rick was insistent on following through with these plans. Kind of like we have the Bible and the plan of salvation. We've got steps we've got to follow. No matter how annoyed we get or roll our eyes, well, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to worship this way? Well, Rescorla found out what happened when the first plane hit the Trade Center. He sprang into action, disregarding the building announcements that told the South Tower applicants to stay put. He said, no, you start your evacuation process just like we practiced. Guided them with a bullhorn, calming them down, getting them out of the building. Thanks to Rescorla, the majority of those Morgan Stanley Dean Winter employees survived as they were able to evacuate the South Tower before the second plane hit. Tragically, Rescorla was seen going back into the building, Trade Center 1, World Trade Center 1, to help more people escape. He didn't survive. The towers collapsed, and his body was never found. You know, we call those who selflessly give their lives to save others heroes, don't we? And if that's the definition of heroism, what do we call Jesus? What does that say about Jesus? If those passengers who gave their lives on Flight 93 were heroes, Jesus is even a greater hero because of what he did. When those passengers boarded that plane that morning, they didn't know that they were going to die. But Jesus, when he came to this earth, he knew what his mission was. Those passengers knew they were going to die when they went to the cockpit to take over the plane. They knew they were going to die regardless. Jesus freely chose to die for us. Now, don't get me wrong, we should never forget those who laid down their lives for us to save others. You know, we should all take a moment to remember all of those that have done that. But even more, every single day, regardless if it's a holiday or not, should never forget that ultimate hero who gave his life so that we might live. We're going to sing a song of invitation in just a minute. If there is a need for you to be baptized into his blood and arise and walk as a Christian, or if there's anything we can do for you, maybe you've strayed, maybe you want to come back to Jesus, we invite you to come as together we stand and sing.
He abides with Thank you, Mike. Got a different face up here tonight, don't we? It's good to see everybody out tonight. If you didn't hang on to your bulletin from Sunday, I'm going to go over just a few things real quick. Remember, our family retreat starts Friday. Taylor, what time are we going to start things off up there at Maywood? Check-in begins at 5. So family retreat Friday night, Saturday, and then finishing up Sunday morning, noonish. Okay. We've also got 1 week from Sunday as our 5th Sunday fellowship meal after evening services that night. And then trunk or treats coming up in October as well on the 27th. Got a few things for the teens. We've got an exposure sign-up list in the foyer for the teens, so not limited to teens, but there's an exposure trip, and the sign-up list's in the foyer. Remember those who are on our prayer list. Are there any updates that we need to know about or make? I would add Pat Hudson is having a heart cath tomorrow, I believe it's right, and Chuck is going to have leg surgery next week. Chuck, tomorrow afternoon? Okay. Well, and so is Tommy Holly. Okay. Tommy Holly's at Brookwood. He had to be taken to the hospital in Jasper yesterday and transferred to Brookwood today. They found a mass on his brain, and they're going to do a biopsy Friday. So keep him in your prayers. And Brenda, of course. Any others? Sunday morning, the Young Pros class will meet in the auditorium due to several of them being at their family retreat. Thank you, Tamela. All right, anything else? All right. Ryan, who has the closing prayer? Do we have somebody? We don't do that, do we? All right. Barry usually calls on somebody, so I'll call on Barry. How's that? If you will stand, and we'll be dismissed to our classes.
Father, we're very grateful for our time to be here tonight. Thank you for our time to study and for our being able to be together. And thank you for the blessing it is to your children. We ask a special blessing on those that have been mentioned that are in need of our prayers, the needs that you know better than we know how to ask, and we ask you to bless them in the way they need it most. We ask you to be with us as we go through our Bible classes, be with those teachers, be with the ones that are participating in those classes. Help us all to grow, to learn, to be better because we're here tonight. Be with us as we go our way home and wherever we will be heading after class tonight. And keep us safe till we meet again. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I realize we don't have a lot of folks out here, but I thought it wouldn't hurt since Jesse started this week if I just went ahead and reminded everyone Jesse started Monday. He is going to be working with us now, and we'll be teaching the auditorium class on Wednesday nights, as Barry has done. So just thought I'd go ahead and introduce him. You're here tonight with 3 of your boys? I think so. Okay, he thinks he has 3 of his 5 boys with him tonight. And Kim and the other 2 are in South Alabama with her mother, I feel quite sure. So welcome, Jesse. I think you'll be happy as he has prepared a lesson for us and delivers that tonight. Jesse.
I need to turn this on. I can just yell so everybody can hear me if that doesn't work. Get all the technical things out of the way. If you would be opening to the book of Ecclesiastes, we're going to be, I guess, not doing exactly a verse by verse, but this book has always been one that I've kind of leaned on when I needed help in my life, or specifically for the reason I'm wanting to use it is when there is a lot of change or a lot of things maybe that I can't control or maybe I'm uncertain of. In the book of Ecclesiastes, there's all of this stuff about how we as humans, we have no control over. We have life and we have to live it, but we still have God that we can serve and that we can look toward, and that is that safety and that refuge no matter what's going on in life. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 1 says, "The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem." Now, who do we understand the author of this book to be, this person in verse 1? I heard somebody say it. Solomon. That's the usual consensus with it. There's a few, I guess, disseminations or people that say it could have been Hezekiah, could have been this person or a different guy, but I think the context of what's being written, the way he's able to talk about wealth and riches and having experienced everything in the world, it seems to lean pretty heavily towards Solomon. So that's going to be the understanding that I approach the book with, but I guess I wouldn't fight you if you stood on something else with it or that there was somebody else involved in it. Verses 2 and 3, it says, "Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by the toil at which he toils under the sun?" Now, in order to understand this book, we've got to understand what that word vanity means. What's your understanding of it, somebody? Emptiness, useless, all right? Vanity means useless. Mist or vapor, that's the actual meaning of the word, and we'll tie that in a little bit. Vanity, uselessness, I always think of the word empty. You have something, but there's no substance to it. Now, think about this. Here is Solomon, this man who is renowned for his wisdom, who is renowned for his wealth, his ability to connect all of these different pieces of his knowledge to make the kingdom grow. And this is the summation of his knowledge. Vanity of vanity, all is vanity. Now, we've got to understand what he's referencing here. Is Jesus Christ vanity? Is God and his works and the salvation that we gain through him, is that what he's referencing here? He's referencing the works of man, us, the things that we do in this life, the toils that we toil. Any of you go to work today? Well, I might be talking to the older group, but how many of you are going to have to go to work tomorrow? Day after, till whatever year the retirement is, right? How many of you had to eat today? You going to eat tomorrow? You get the thought here. There are things of life that just happen that we have to keep being involved with, that we have to keep up, that we have to do. Vanity of vanities. You eat today, you're going to be hungry tomorrow. The work we do today isn't going to be sufficient to carry us through to the end of our life. Solomon is focusing on this physical world that so many people alive today, that's all they focus on. Not a raise of hands, but how many of you have family members that maybe are just focused on money or wealth or influence or know of people like that? That their whole life is dedicated to these things that are vanity. Solomon, God through Solomon, is giving us this understanding. Everything in this world is useless. It's going to fall by the wayside. I remember Jesus saying something about when he returned, what was going to happen to this world. Are we going to take it with us? It's going to be burned up, right? It's going to be done away with. Its usefulness has ended. The things we do in this life, they have purpose. They serve goals to feed our families, to put a roof over our heads, to fulfill our life. But you see, God, spiritual things, that focus on what Jesus and God through him have done for us, that's what we should care about. That should be my focus as a Christian, a God-fearing individual here on this earth. All right, verse 4, let's do 4 through 9 here. It says, a generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun goes down and hastens to a place where it rises. The wind blows south, goes around to the north, and around goes the wind, and it circuits, the wind returns. All the streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. What's he saying here? The sun rises, and what happens? Sun sets. What happens the next day? It's this cycle of the world that God created, of the seasons that come and go, that how they remain the same, this cycle of life and birth, of generations. Life is the same. Now, we say that sitting in an air-conditioned building, having to fiddle with a microphone. It's not exactly the same, but there's nothing different. Life goes as it goes. People have to eat, people have to work, people have to have kids, they have to find fulfillment in life. That's the cycle that Solomon is talking about. He says, life is what it is. Verse 8 now, all things are full of weariness, a man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing, and what has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. I've always loved that phrasing there at the end. There's nothing new under the sun. It gives us two thoughts with that, or at least two that I bring out. One is he's focusing where he's talking about. This is where all this vanity is. Where is it? Here. The things that are under the sun, this physical world. But then what else? There is nothing new under the sun. Again, we're going to eat tomorrow, we're going to eat the next day, I'm going to do work, I'm going to build something, or I'm going to learn something. All of these things have been done before by somebody. Again, the dressing might be different. We have electric cars, we have gas-powered engines, we have airplanes that take us places, but it's still traveling. The dressing's different, but the actions, the motivations, the feelings, the things that drive us as human beings, they are exactly the same then as they are now for us. So again, we have this great source of Solomon, wisest man that ever lived, blessed by God with this. And now here's this book saying, essentially, don't focus on this life. Don't worry about the toil and the trouble and the difficulties and the joys and the pleasures that you have. Those things are temporary. Very quickly, I want to skip over to chapter 2 and verse 24. I meant to do this at the beginning, so just imagine that I did this. Ecclesiastes 2 and verse 24. If somebody would read that very loud for us.
There is nothing better for a person that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw. It was from the hand of God.
All right, now we might have the tendency to roll this into a saying that we have today, and that is, eat, drink, and be merry for what? Tomorrow we die. Now, is that a truthful statement? We're going to die, so let's live our life now. But we look at this, he's not saying here that we should just focus on the physical, because some might look at this and read that or force that thought in here. But he's just saying we're going to live, so let's live. Let's eat, drink, and be merry, because why? The end of that verse says, here's the reason why we can do that. It's not, again, because of the physical. It's not because I'm searching for treasures or riches, or that's not my heart's desire. It's because God said that we can find pleasure, enjoyment, satisfaction in the work that we do in this life. Any of you ever built something or made something and you are really proud of it? You'll hear me joke about my 5 boys, but I am more proud of them than my wife first and then my boys. But there is nothing that I wouldn't try to do or accomplish for them. You have something you feel that way. Maybe it's your kids, maybe it's something else. I'll let you decide what it is. But we all have that something that we feel prideful toward. God here is saying this idea of, I want you to enjoy this life that I've given you. Now again, there's lots of stuff that goes along with that, but God's saying you have the right to enjoy life. You have the right to be fulfilled and find these things that, even though they're useless, I'm going to stick my foot in my mouth and I'm just going to go ahead and get it over with. How many of you like football? How many of you are Auburn fans or Alabama fans? I don't really mind. I guess I would label myself a lapsed Auburn fan, but there's a lot of people that put a lot of effort and a lot of money and a lot of energy behind football, right? But at the end of the day, what good does a win do? What good does a loss do? Again, we can enjoy it, but that's not the focus of our life here on this earth. All right, then skip to the end of the book, chapter 12, verses 13 and 14, if somebody would get those 2 verses. Chapter 12, 13 and 14.
The conclusion that all have been heard is fear God and keep His commandments. Because this applies to every person. For God will bring every act to judgment, everything which is hidden, whether it is good or evil.
All right, at the end of the book, what does the preacher say? What is the conclusion of this entire matter? What should we do? Fear God, keep His commandments. So we could just stop our study of Ecclesiastes right now and just be done with it, because that's the message. Life happens. Life is what it is. We have the right to find joy and satisfaction and the ability to feel completion in this world, but that's not the end of it. The whole thing, fear God, keep His commandments. You put God first, and the rest we'll deal with, right? All right, let's go back to chapter 1. Again, like I said, just imagine that happened at the very beginning of the study. Yes, sir.
Revelation, and it's the same thing. That's the whole video man.
It's the same thought, but a little bit different focus, right? God's the one in control. We win, so what should you do? Focus Him, serve Him. Exactly. All right, let's look at verses 10 and 11. There is a thing which is said, see, this is new, it has already been in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of latter things yet to be among those who come after. Now, verse 11, you could change the word things there to people. That doesn't hurt the original text any. The idea with verse 11 is, what did y'all have to eat this time last year for breakfast? I don't remember. I'm going to guess nothing because I don't usually eat breakfast. It's probably right, but I don't know. The former things pass away. Everything happens. There's nothing new under the sun. The things we did yesterday, while they might be useful and be good for us, that was yesterday, right? That's not today. The idea is we forget about what the past generations have done, what we have done in the past. That's just what we do as human beings. The farther you get away from an event, just the more it fades, usually. So the world is going to come and go. It's going to have these cycles. It's going to have this idea of the next generation coming. Now that can be disheartening, can it? To know that I'm going to die, my kids are going to live on, and eventually I'm probably going to be forgotten here, right? There might be a few people who remember my name, or maybe my name will be written on a few things or carved on something somewhere, but 200 years, 300 years, who's going to know me? Again, the point is it doesn't matter, because God's going to know me, because I'm going to be that person that fears Him, keeps His commandments, and then gains the blessings, and again realizes this life isn't the one that matters. All right, verses 12, let's go 12 through 15 now. It says, "And I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven." Again, that phrasing there, under heaven, is, I guess you could interchange it with under the sun. It's that same thought of here on this earth. "Applied my heart to seek and search out by wisdom all things done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after the wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted." Now, what is he saying is unhappy in these few verses? The search or the gathering of what? Verse 13, I applied my heart to seek and search out all wisdom that's done under heaven, but it's an unhappy business for the children of men or children of God to be busy with. The gathering of knowledge, the building ourselves up. The easiest way for me to understand this is go back to your time in schooling. Maybe you were the kid that loved it, but I was not. It was a chore for me to sit in class and learn and study. It was wearisome. Now, I'm very thankful that I learned it, the things that I have, the schooling that I've gotten, but I'm glad I don't have to do that part again. It's a weary thing to have to study and learn. Anybody at your job ever had to relearn something or learn some new app or computer system that's come in, and what's your first thought? Again, right? Something new I've got to learn, another skill I've got to add on to this. Again, not that these things are bad or evil in and of themselves, but just there's a weariness to it, right? There's always something new to be done or something else that has to do or that we have to be involved in. Verse 15, though, what is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. Anybody have a thought on that?
God was talking to Adam after the fall and was telling him, okay, now here's what you're going to have to do.
Bringing in the idea of the toil and the work that Adam brought on himself and all of us because of his fall. I think we could bring that thought in here that it would be, I guess, less wearisome if Adam hadn't done that. But he's saying all of this, what's crooked cannot be made straight, and what's lacking cannot be counted. My mind jumps to, I think it's Luke 3 and verse 5, where it says Jesus is essentially going to make straight the crooked. Again, what is Solomon focused on? He's so focused on the physical. Can I take, let's think of something impossible. Can I take this pane of glass and make it as durable as a diamond? Make it have the same qualities as that? I mean, there might be a process to that, but I don't know it. There's not a way to do that, so I cannot count it. I cannot make it happen. I believe what Solomon's saying in this is there is a world of rules and laws that we have to live in. And nothing I can do can change this physical world and the way it works. Any of you want to try and help me stop the sun tomorrow? It's an impossible task, right? I can't do that. None of us can do that. We can't make straight what is crooked. We can't change the laws that God has put in place. But again, with Luke chapter 3 and verse 5, the idea is spiritually, who can make us straight? Who can cleanse us from the sins that Adam brought into this world? It's Christ. It's God. It's that connection that we have with Him. All right, verses 16 through 18 now. He said, I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me. Now, I think this is one of the stronger passages that kind of point to the idea that it's Solomon that wrote this rather than some of the other theories, because who had the most wisdom in this world? Who was the wisest man to live? I think any of the kings that came after Solomon probably wouldn't make this statement if they were writing this book, because they would acknowledge that Solomon was wiser than them. That's just my thought. Take it or leave it if you want. I've said in my heart, I've acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me. My heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom, to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is but a striving after the wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. Again, that's that idea that the more we learn, the more we're aware of how the world works and maybe problems and flaws that exist and maybe things that we can't deal with. How many of you want to, I'm going to try to phrase this tactfully. How many of you want to fix the way our government works? Make it less whatever. All right?
The more you know, the more imperfect you see everything.
The more flaws you're able to tell. We can look at our government, again, and see the flaws in it. We can see that there's problems, but, I mean, we can do some, but not really change it ourselves, right? This world is what it is. We live in it. We have to abide by the rules that God set, but, again, we're still focused on heaven. We're still focused not on the physical things of this life, but we realize that even in intellect and knowledge, that at the end, it's not going to matter. At the end of this world, who is going to be saved? It's not a trick question. Those who have done what? We'll use Ecclesiastes. Fear God, keep His commandments, and maybe understand that that means being baptized, following after what the New Testament teaches, all of those things. But I forgot where I was going with that. That ever happened to you, Barry? Anybody remember what I was saying? All right, let's go back to this then. For much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. We have to understand that it doesn't matter what we know or how much we know, but that we're fearing God and keeping His commandments. I remembered, I got back to it. It doesn't matter how many PhDs we have after our name or how many diplomas we've earned or certificates we've gotten from completing things, right? Again, the idea of schooling, much vexation and knowledge. Again, useful, but wearisome. Solomon says, at the end, that's not going to matter. Because what's going to matter is, do I hear that phrase, well done, good and faithful servant? Am I able to hear the acknowledgement that I feared God and kept His commandments? Again, Solomon here at the end of this one is, wisdom is good, it's useful. He'll kind of explain that a little bit later on. But he says that's not the thing to be seeking after. Because again, just like everything else, it's vanity as well. All right, any thoughts before we move on to chapter 2? Okay. All right, chapter 2 then. Let's look at verses, let's start out with verse 1. The preacher again says, "And I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure, enjoy yourself. But behold, this was also vanity." Now, what is the preacher saying? What's he presenting to himself? What's the idea? I'm going to see what makes me happy. I'm going to look at this world and I'm going to enjoy everything. Now, I think we could probably include sinful things in this, but as we'll see from this list, he's mainly talking about, again, the toils of life. You want a new car, you go out and work hard to get that new car. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Now, again, using his words, it's useless because that new car is going to rust. You're going to have to change tires and replace everything on it eventually. But there's nothing wrong. He says, "I said in my heart, come to now, test myself with pleasure, enjoy yourself." He says, I'm going to enjoy everything that God has put on this world for me to enjoy. And then he goes into this big long list. Well, in just a second, verse 3, he said, "Then I said of laughter, it is mad, of pleasure, what use is it?" Joy, maybe comedy we put in this. He says, what use is it? Of pleasure. Again, the idea is that while these things aren't sinful, there's no real spiritual benefit from us focusing on these things solely. Verse 3 then, "I searched my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom." And that phrasing there, "my heart still guiding me with wisdom," is, I think, what's saying it's not sinful things that he's searching after, but he's following maybe our hobbies or pursuits, things that we might find pleasure in, hunting, fishing, things of those nature. "And lay hold on folly till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life." So he's saying, I'm going to do everything because I want to try to figure out what should we spend our time on. What should we as human beings, who will go back to this idea, what is, maybe jump to James, our life is a what? Vapor, using that thought of breath. We're just here a moment and gone, right? So what are we going to do with the time that we've been given? And that's what Solomon's saying. I'm going to search out all these things and do all these things and figure out what is beneficial for me. Starting with verse 4 now. This is his list of accomplishments, I guess. He said, "I made great works. I built houses, planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruits. I made myself pools from which I watered the forest of growing trees. I bought male servants, female servants, and had slaves who were born in my house. I had great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I gathered for myself silver, gold, and the treasure of kings' provinces. I got singers, both men, women, and many concubines, the delight of the sons of man. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me." What did Solomon seek to fill his life with when he says the pleasure here?
Material things.
Again, not sinful things, but they're material. He's saying, I built houses, I built gardens, I built parks, I watered these, aqueducts or whatever you would call them. He said, I did all of these things. Had all of this wealth brought into my house, money, riches. I had all of these people, slaves and herds and things like that. He's saying I had everything physically imaginable. Every pleasure in this life that I could fulfill, I did. No one greater came before me. Now, what's the end result of this? Verse 10, "And whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil." Now, I want to make note of this, because what's he saying? I did all of this stuff, and what did I find joy in? The accomplishment of these tasks, the building of these buildings, maybe the process to gather people and materials and see it built up, whichever aspect of it was that he's talking about. He found pleasure in this work. Now again, think of our lives. We work, we toil, but do we find pleasure in what we do? contentment, not that we're necessarily accomplishing something that will last, but we're accomplishing something that will help my family or help me, or again, maybe something I find enjoyment in. As I've told some of you, I worked for a handyman construction company before coming here, and that's because I found great joy in that. Building things, working with my hands, that is a release for me. That is what I do, I guess you'd say, as a hobby or to relieve stress. But still, those things that I make, those things that we do, those jobs that we accomplish, they still don't matter. Because again, all that matters is our relationship with God, that service that we have for Him, those deeds that we're working on His behalf. And not the houses we build or the cars we buy or the money we lay up for ourselves later on in life. Again, not that those things are bad or sinful, but they're just vanity. Useless and empty as it relates to our salvation. Verse 11 now. And I considered all my hands that had done, the toil I expended doing it, and it was all vanity and striving after the wind. Again, it's that phrasing or that thought of it's just a breath, striving after the wind. It's that vapor that's fluttering and then gone. All right, verse 12 now. He switches from the idea of focusing on our pleasures, the pursuits that we want to go after. And now he talks about the vanity or the emptiness of living wisely. Now again, let's go through the whole thing and we'll see what he's saying with this. Verse 12 through 13. And so I considered wisdom and madness and folly. For what can a man do who comes after the king? Only that which has already been done. Then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, as there is more gain in light than in darkness. Now, again, he's talking about our physical life, not our spiritual with this. Is there more gain in wisdom than folly, spiritually speaking? Absolutely. The wisdom that comes from God, the understanding, and again, all of those blessings that we gain from Christ through Him and because of Him. But he's saying here in this life, to live with wisdom, or to live by wisdom and folly, you're going to end up at about the same place. But he says there's more gain in the wisdom. Now, let's hurry up and go through this because I don't want to end with that thought. Oh, wait, I have 5 more minutes, don't I? Okay, good. All right, the wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. Yet I perceive that the same events happen to all of them. And that's the key with this section here. He says to live wisely or to live in folly, again, doesn't really matter because what's going to happen to both people? Those who live by wisdom, do they still have to deal with the diseases of life? Cancer, heart problems, accidents, driving a car. Do those things still happen to the wise? Do they happen to those that live in folly? Have you ever thought, why did this happen to that person, or why didn't it happen to somebody else? Solomon's saying, life happens. Things occur that we can't control, whether I'm trying to live as closely to God as I can or whether I'm trying to live as far away from Him as I can. The things of this life are still going to happen. I'm still going to get sick. Again, accidents, acts of nature, they're still going to occur. But it's still better to live by wisdom, right? I'll close with this thought. There was a night that after Wednesday service, I was going back into my office, and in my mind, I said, I don't need to turn the light on. I know where my office is. I know where that door is. I know I walk this way, then I turn that way, and then I miss the table, and then I'll be right in my office, and I turn the light on. Guess where I ended up, I think, in a classroom nowhere near where I was going. How did I get there? I was in darkness, right? We'll use the idea of folly here. I thought I knew better, or I thought it didn't matter. I just wandered around the dark for a few minutes, and then I turned the light on and got to where I wanted to go. But we see the reasoning here. If you live by folly, or maybe you're not the smartest person, or maybe you can't see things. It's okay, because you can still be of service to God. The things of life are still going to happen to you. And even if you strive to serve God the best you can every day, as we should be, again, these problems are still going to arise, or at least some. The difference is, I think, we'll know how to deal with them, or at least we'll have somebody to fall back on who can help us through these situations. All right, we'll close there tonight then. We'll pick up on verse 15, Ecclesiastes 2 next week. If y'all mind, we'll bow our heads and we'll have a word of prayer, and then we'll dismiss. Our dear loving and righteous and almighty Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight thankful for this day you've given us, and especially thankful for this time that we can come together and gather together as Christians and open your word and hopefully gain insight and wisdom that we can use in our lives. We thank you so much for this Bible that we have. Thank you so much for Jesus and his willingness to come and die for us. We're so thankful that you loved us enough to do those things and give those things for us. Please be with us as we go through this week and through our lives. Help us to put you first, and help us to fear you. Help us to keep your commandments. Please forgive us of any sins that may be in our life. Please be with those that we've mentioned that are sick. Help them recover. And it's in your Son's name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.